The Sacramento Kings' 130-109 loss to the Oklahoma City Thunder tonight wasn't even their biggest loss of the night. It's the loss of their identity, which in reality has been MIA since the end of the 2022-2023 season. The Kings' problems aren't even consistent anymore, but until the Kings can put together a consistent 48-minute effort, the playoffs might be a pipe dream. You are listening to Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all season long. Today's episode is brought to you by BILT. Start earning points on rent that you're already paying by going to joinbilt.com/LockedOnNBA. That's joinbilt.com/LockedOnNBA. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News, and I'm frustrated tonight. I know you are probably frustrated too from a Sacramento Kings standpoint. If you're an Oklahoma City Thunder fan that's tuning in to take a victory lap, hey, enjoy it. Your Thunder are really freaking good, and it's very clear the gap between the Thunder greatness and the Sacramento Kings not even goodness anymore, right? If I were to draw a line across the screen right now, right, and on this side is great, in the dead center is good, and on the other side is bad. Where do you think the Sacramento Kings fall on that line right now? If they're not dead center at good, which I don't think they are, they're definitely not trending towards great like we were hoping they would last season. Kings are moving in the wrong direction. They're moving towards bad. With their loss tonight, the Kings are now 8-10 on the season. And like we talked about after last night's Kings loss to the Brooklyn Nets, while it's not the end of the world, right? 18 games into an 82-game season, it doesn't mean that the Kings are cooked. It's over. It's done with. But I'll ask the same question tonight that I asked last night. What is it about the way the Sacramento Kings are playing that gives you confidence that they'll be able to turn it around? They have the talent. We've seen in the past their ability to not just win games, but to score at a high level and even at times defend at a high level. But this team just does not seem capable of putting consistent efforts together. And they're losing games in different ways every single night. It's complex, right? The Kings have a complex problem. And when things are complex, sometimes you just try to simplify things as much as possible. And I've simplified this down to a feeling that I've had since the end of the 2022-2023 season, since the Kings were eliminated from the playoffs to the Golden State Warriors or almost 2 years ago, right? This Kings offense has never looked the same. Right, they were number one in the NBA in 2022-2023 offensively. They were unstoppable. They shot lights out from the perimeter. They got to the rim. De'Aaron Fox couldn't be stopped in the fourth quarter. Teams could not figure them out or had any hope of defending them. Kevin Durant was going on his podcast saying you can't stop these guys, right? The Kings were on another level, the best offense in NBA history. And while that offense does not stand at the top of the record books today because of the great offense that the Indiana Pacers and other teams had last year, while the NBA continues to trend in an offensive direction, the Sacramento Kings offense has never looked the same. And I don't say that to diminish the defensive issues, because there are clear defensive issues with this Kings team, particularly from the perimeter. The Kings seemingly every single night are torched from three-point range. The Sacramento Kings defense three-point defense is hope they miss, because the Kings are so determined to cut off lanes to the paint and shut down the paint that they give too much space to shooters, and teams shoot lights out, especially in this building. against the Sacramento Kings. So the three-point defense is atrocious. This team definitely has defensive issues. But look, you look at this roster, top to bottom, and you say this is an offensively gifted roster. Offense is supposed to be the strength and identity of this team, and it has not been. Look at the last 3 games. In LA, a 29-point first half. Last night, a 15-point fourth quarter in a close game versus Brooklyn. That game was tied going into the fourth quarter. The Kings scored 15 freaking points in the final quarter. And tonight, after a really solid first half where the Kings and Thunder were neck and neck through like 28, 29 minutes of this game, in the second half, the Sacramento Kings fall off the face of the earth, especially from three-point range. They shoot just 7%, 1 of 13 from three-point range in the second half. They scored just 47 points in the second half after, I think, 61 points, if I'm not mistaken, in the first half, right? Their offense collapses. It falls apart. While the Oklahoma City Thunder's offense stays consistent through pretty much 48 minutes, they create the separation. They put this game away late in the third quarter and really secured it early in the fourth quarter. Mike Brown pregame was talking about the first half versus the second half. And he shared some numbers on the defensive side. He said defensively, the Sacramento Kings have been terrible in the first half, but really good in the second half. In the first half, the Kings have a defensive rating coming into tonight of 115.7, which is 25th in the NBA. So it's one of the worst defenses in the NBA in the first half. In the second half, that defensive rating is down to 108.5, which is 6th in the NBA. So Mike comes into this game tonight talking about the importance of having a better first half than a second half. And I even talked about this on the podcast last night. I was tweeting about it before the game tonight. I was very interested to see how the Kings would start this game because that was the major topic of conversation after last night's loss to the Nets, where the Kings came out without energy, without intensity, didn't execute early on in the game, and once again fell behind by a significant margin. Right? They battled back, good for them, but they ultimately lost the game because they fell in too deep of a hole early on. That's been a consistent problem for this team so far this season. So Mike is talking about this difference between the first half and the second half defensively. And I get it. And it's worth talking about because he's right about the defensive inefficiencies. But what do you get tonight? You get a first half where the Sacramento Kings stuck around because of their offense. We're going to talk about Keon Ellis starting over Kevin Huerter in a second. Many of you happy by that, and I don't necessarily blame you, but the defense wasn't any better in the first half. The difference between the first half tonight and the first half in other games is that the Sacramento Kings were scoring the basketball better and didn't fall into a deep hole early on. But defensively, they were still terrible. And then the second half, the defense struggled throughout the second half, and the offense completely fell off. Look, this team will never be their best if offensively they are not one of the best teams in the league. That is it. That is the bottom line with this group. Defense is important. I'm not disregarding defense, but until this team offensively can figure out how to be consistent through 48 minutes, how they can be feared in the league again, how they can have consistent output from everybody, and for God's sakes, hit a freaking three-point shot through the course of 4 quarters. Until they can do that, this team isn't going anywhere. They're done. They're cooked because offense is their strength. Offense is their identity. And they have lost it completely. And it's been lost, not just for these 18 games so far this season. It's been lost going back to last year. And unfortunately, the addition of DeMar DeRozan didn't find it because DeMar did his job tonight. 30 points, was cooking throughout this entire game, and it wasn't nearly enough. Sacramento's offense is MIA. And it's to a point where your general manager, Monte McNair, has talked about it publicly multiple times. You go back to the trade deadline last year, talks about our offense needs to improve. Go back to the end of last season, talks about our offense needs to improve. Go to this offseason with all the moves that he made, bringing in DeMar DeRozan, the press conference after that, the offense needs to improve. The press conference that he gave at Media Day, offense needs to improve. Pace is so important. Monte McNair, the analytics guy, is telling you offense is the focus, offense is the focus, offense is the focus. Your head coach is saying defense needs to get better, defense needs to get better, defense needs to get better. Here's the reality. They're both right, but this roster is wrong. That's the only logical explanation. They're both right. Defense needs to be better. Offense needs to improve or get back to where it was. But this roster is incapable of both, it seems. For some reason why. Keon Ellis got the start over Kevin Huerter tonight. No problem with it. It was a very late change to the starting lineup. We were caught by surprise by it. And yes, overall, the Kings started the game better. It's a one-game sample size. I don't know if it would have been worse had Kevin Huerter started or not. But regardless, Keon Ellis started the game. In the first half, I thought Keon Ellis played solid. Right? In total, Keon Ellis in this game had 8 points on 3 of 4 shooting, 2 of 3 from three-point range. Kevin Huerter off the bench, 0 points, only played 10 minutes and 24 seconds, went 0 of 2 from three-point range. That's pretty much all he did grab 1 rebound, and that was it. Again, Keon Ellis replacing Kevin Huerter. Keon is shooting the ball better than Kevin Huerter is so far this season, so he's got that edge there, even though I think Kevin Huerter is a better shooter, and Kevin Huerter is defended very differently than Keon Ellis is because Kevin has proven his shooting ability throughout his career and Keon hasn't yet. But regardless, Keon Ellis is shooting better than Kevin Huerter, so he has the edge there. Defensively, we know Keon Ellis is a better individual defender than Kevin Huerter is. And yet, in the first half, the Kings could not get stops because OKC scored 63 points in the first half on 60% shooting from the field, 46% from three-point range, and 80% from the free throw line. The defense did not get any better with Keon Ellis starting. Is that all on Keon? No. But just that, therefore, it's also not all on Kevin Huerter. I'm getting frustrated at some of y'all because y'all want to find a scapegoat so freaking bad. And it drives me crazy. Now it's Kevin Huerter. Kevin Huerter's the problem. Kevin Huerter's the scapegoat. I'm cool with Mike Brown making the change of Keon Ellis being in the starting lineup, right? If that's the move going forward, I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it. Really, I thought Kevin Huerter had done enough early in the season to kind of secure that spot. I guess it's open season again. Keon Ellis is getting opportunity. I understand that with that starting lineup, that is the only real changeable position that you have. If you're going to adjust anything with your starting lineup, it's that starting two-guard spot because Keegan's not going anywhere, De'Aaron's not going anywhere, Domas and DeMar aren't going anywhere. So I get that. It's the logical change to make. Really the only change you can make. But I am not a subscriber to the belief that Kevin Huerter is the problem, so you had to make that change, and Kevin Huerter should only be playing 10 minutes a night because Kevin Huerter is the issue. Stop making the guy your scapegoat, because the reality is Kevin Huerter is not the only problem. Keon Ellis is not the clear solution. This Kings roster has an issue. And while I understand that when Kevin Huerter came back into the game in the second half, late in that third quarter, that's when Oklahoma City went on a pretty significant run. We can also talk about the part that officiating had to play on that. In fact, we'll get into that later on in the podcast. But I do not subscribe to the belief that Kevin Huerter is the problem with this Kings team. If Keon Ellis gives you a better chance and helps you start the games better and gives you a better overall impact through starter-level minutes and opening up the game with him, again, I'm fine with that. But I'm not going to sit here on the Locked On Kings podcast and agree with the crap that I see on social media that Kevin Huerter is the problem, and it's when Kevin Huerter comes into the game that everything goes wrong, or Kevin Huerter being in the starting lineup is the issue with the Sacramento Kings. I've called out Kevin Huerter before. I've held him accountable before. I was very critical of Kevin Huerter a lot last season. So I'm not Captain Save a Kevin Huerter or the belief that Kevin Huerter is the best player on the Sacramento Kings by any means, or that he is blameless. Absolutely not. If you know me and you've listened to this podcast, you know that I've paid attention to Kevin Huerter's faults and his issues. But y'all are looking so freaking hard to find somebody to blame, to put it all on one person to make yourselves feel better, or to suggest that if that person was gone, then everything would be fixed. It's not that simple. That's not the issue with the Sacramento Kings. This is a roster-wide issue. This team cannot hit shots. They cannot put together a full 48 minutes offensively. Defensively, their perimeter defense continues to be trash like it was last season. The Kings have a team problem. So I'm not going to be blaming Kevin Huerter for that. If Keon's the starter going forward, I'm happy to see it. And I'm a fan of Keon and a believer of Keon. But I also don't believe that Kevin Huerter, maybe it's a bad matchup against OKC, but Kevin Huerter should be playing more than 10 minutes a night. Because again, offensively you're struggling. Kevin Huerter is one of your better shooters that you have on this team. You need to get him going if you want to be close to what you were 2 seasons ago when you were at your best. Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast, like I said at the top of the show, is brought to you by BILT. PSA for anyone who rents. If you haven't heard of BILT, you're about to thank me, but I won't take any credit. Earning points on rent is now a reality when you pay your rent through BILT. You don't even have to check with your landlord to start earning points that you can use towards flights, hotel stays, fitness classes, and even your next rent payment. I'll break it down for you. There's no cost to join BILT, and as a member, you'll earn valuable points on rent and on your everyday spending. BILT points can be transferred to your favorite hotels and airlines, and even the ones you haven't heard of. There are over 500 airlines and 700,000 hotels and properties around the world that you can redeem your BILT points towards. Points can also be redeemed towards a future rent payment and unique experiences that only BILT members can access. So if you're not earning points on rent, my question is, why not? You're already paying rent. Might as well benefit from it in some way. Start earning points on your rent that you're already paying by going to joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNBA. That's joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNBA. Make sure you use that URL so they know what we sent you. Joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNBA to start earning points on your rent payments today. Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is also brought to you by Robinhood. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.25% APY on univested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on IRA account contributions. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. Yes, we have to talk about officiating tonight, because in the third quarter, officiating played a big part to how this game got out of hand. This game was close the entire night until late in the third quarter, right? Neck and neck. I think OKC, the largest lead they built was like a 6-point lead. It was going back and forth. I think the Sacramento Kings even built a 1-point lead in the third quarter before everything fell apart. And while I'm not saying that the Thunder won because of the officials or anything as silly, simple, or quite honestly stupid as that, I do believe this game completely changed in favor of OKC when the whistle started going against the Sacramento Kings. In the first half, the Kings had 8 total team fouls. In the third quarter, they had 10. The game slowed down. OKC got to the line. There were a couple foul calls that blatantly stopped fast break opportunities for the Sacramento Kings. Late whistles galore at times during this game. And what that did was that opened the door to the Sacramento Kings losing their composure. This is where the Kings have to look at themselves in the mirror, right? Because yes, the officials were bad at times. And yes, the officials allowed the Oklahoma City Thunder to create some momentum. But the Sacramento Kings allowed themselves to lose focus. I understand it's frustrating. Hell, it's frustrating watching it from a standpoint. I know the 18,000 fans here inside the Golden One Center were booing and chanting, "Ref, you suck," and they were getting frustrated with the officiating. We all feel it. We all feel those emotions, right? But the Kings allowed it to take them out of their game, and it's not the first time it's happened. In fact, it even happened last night against the Brooklyn Nets. The Kings need to do a better job when they're going through that, as frustrating, as difficult as it is, not allowing it to impact their play. Because the Kings got frustrated. They got knocked out of their rhythm. OKC never faltered. They stayed consistent throughout the 48 minutes, regardless of the calls they were or weren't getting. Continued to knock down shots like sharks. They smelled blood in the water. They pounced and quickly built a double-digit lead that the Sacramento Kings really had no chance of coming back from. So the officiating is out of your control, and you're damn right it's frustrating, and you're damn right, as we know very well here in Sacramento, you can lose a game because of the officials alone. But that wasn't tonight. The Kings didn't lose this game because of the officials. They lost this game because they allowed themselves to be impacted by the officials, as well as their inability to string together a 48-minute or close to 48-minute consistent offensive effort. Right? The Kings fell apart in the second half, and their frustrations with the officiating were at the center of it. It's just one of the ways where like OKC is just clearly better, right? OKC is just at the top, not the top of the mountain because they haven't won anything yet, but they're up there, and the Sacramento Kings are far below them, looking up, going, how do we get to that spot, right? How do we get to from the good status that we were to great that they are at? And it's how consistent OKC plays, right? No Alex Caruso, no Chet Holmgren tonight. This wasn't even the best version of the Oklahoma City Thunder, and yes, yet they don't skip a beat. They play the same way for 48 minutes. They attack you. They score 130 points without having any kind of offensive explosion. They're just consistent. They knock down shots. They get to the rim. They get you into foul trouble. They make the right defensive plays. They exploit turnovers, right? The Sacramento Kings turn the ball over 3 fewer times than the Oklahoma City Thunder. The Kings scored 14 points off the Thunder, 15 turnovers. The Thunder scored 21 points off Sacramento's 12. So when OKC turns you over, they're going to make you pay for it. Add it to the list. You look at rebounding, right? The Oklahoma City Thunder, 44 rebounds to Sacramento's 31. You look at the assists, OKC, 28 to Sacramento's 22. Like, OKC just knows how to put together a solid, consistent 48-minute effort. You play the same way every single night, regardless of your competition, you're going to be a good basketball team. This is something that the Sacramento Kings really have never been able to figure out. Malik Monk did make his return. It was great to see Malik Monk back. He had 14 points, shot 4 of 12 from the field, 2 of 7 from three-point range, also had 3 assists, a steal, and a block tonight. The Kings bench was better than it was last night. That's not saying much because they had 9 points last night versus Brooklyn. 22 points tonight. 14 of them, again, were from Malik. 6 of them were from Isaac Jones, who got a decent amount of minutes tonight. Why? Because Trey Lyles got hurt. We don't know the severity of the injury, the extent of the injury. It is a calf injury, and I believe Trey has dealt with calf injuries before. Maybe he misses extended time. Maybe he doesn't. We have no idea. Regardless, though, one, this team just seems to be allergic to staying healthy because they finally got pretty much back to full strength with Malik returning. Immediately, Trey Lyles goes down. And ultimately, look, Malik Monk comes back again. It's great to see him. I'm not blaming him for anything, right? He's going to need time to kind of incorporate himself back fully, although he was aggressive tonight. He made a good impact at times. It was good to see him bring that energy off the bench. But Malik Monk returned, and the Kings' problems remained. DeMar DeRozan has been back for 3 games. Kings are 0-3. Domantas Sabonis has been back for 3 games. Kings are 0-3. Right? Like, there's not a savior coming to save this team. This team is, even if they're not at full strength, they're not playing to the level that they're capable of playing, right? So there's no, this guy's injured or the Kings are missing these key players, or we're certainly not going to say Devin Carter not playing is the reason why this team is struggling, because the Kings aren't at full strength because Devin Carter hasn't been medically cleared yet. If that's the case, then this team is big time screwed if they're hoping Devin Carter is going to be the one to save them. I'm not saying he can't be a difference maker, but Devin Carter is not going to be the one to turn this team around to help the Kings figure everything out. Right? As good as we may think he is, that ain't him. That's not the case. The Kings can't think that way. So there's no savior walking through that door unless Monte McNair picks up the phone, doesn't wait to the trade deadline and goes, this is a problem. We need to address this now because we're falling behind quickly. Kings are falling behind quickly. And that's something we are going to address, where the Kings are at. Plus, we have to talk about this 7-game stretch the Sacramento Kings did terribly in. And I'll pose the question, how can you find a consistent fix to an inconsistent problem? We'll discuss all that still to come on Locked On Kings. Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is also brought to you by SKIMS. Yeah, the underwear company. And you may know SKIMS because of all the amazing women's underwear that they've made over the years. But SKIMS has a great men's selection as well. And look, tonight's not a fun night for a Sacramento Kings fan. Watching a game like that, not ideal. But at least I was comfortable because I'm wearing SKIMS briefs, right? They do the job. And there you have different types of underwear that SKIMS makes for a multitude of different scenarios, right? If you're athletic or active, maybe going to the gym, SKIMS got the underwear for that. If you're just lounging around the house, kind of more casual, SKIMS has that. SKIMS has your everyday underwear, of course. I mean, like sleeping in a bed, right? They say your mattress, you spend so much time in your mattress, make sure you get the nice mattress to because you spend so much time in it. It's one of the most important purchases of your life. I'd argue underwear is up there too. You're going to be spending pretty much your entire life in underwear, might as well find the best underwear that's for you, that is comfortable, keeps you cool or warm, depending upon what you're looking on. You can find that with Skims. Look, normally around Christmas time, around the holidays, it's considered a bad gift to get socks or to get underwear for Christmas. If you get Skims underwear for Christmas, you will be a very happy camper. Trust me on that. It's far from coal in your stocking. Shop SKIMS Mens at skims.com/LockedOnNBA. Let them know we sent you after you place your order. Make sure you select podcast in the survey and select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. And if you're looking for, again, perfect gifts for the holiday season, also some Black Friday deals, Skims just launched their biggest holiday shop ever. Also available at skims.com/LockedOnNBA. Here on Locked On Kings, coming into this 7-game stretch, I told you how great of an opportunity this was for the Kings to really build momentum and build upon their, I think at the time they were at least 2 games over 500 at the time, right? Here's an opportunity for the Kings with 6 out of their next 7 games at home to really make up some ground and get some wins and build a safety net and put themselves firmly in that top 6 conversation in the Western Conference. Well, they ain't there. And look, if I were to tell you going into that stretch that the Kings would end that stretch with a loss at home to the Oklahoma City Thunder, you'd go, okay, yeah, it's OKC, right? There's nothing wrong with losing to the Thunder. That's a damn good basketball team. In my opinion, they are going to represent the West in the NBA Finals. That's how much of a believer I am in the Oklahoma City Thunder. That being said, when you lose at home to Atlanta and you lose at home to Brooklyn, no disrespect to those two teams, but those are games you should have won on your home floor that you didn't, and then you wrap it up with a loss at home to OKC, it really stings. You didn't get your work done ahead of time, and now you're paying for it, right? So over this 7-game stretch, the Kings go 2-5. That means they went 2-4 at home during that stretch. The Kings are now 4-6 at home this season. Again, home is where you're supposed to be your best. Home is where the best teams in the league feel unstoppable. It's called home court advantage for a reason. Well, for some reason, the Kings are having a hard time finding any advantage of playing in their own building. And it's turned what should be a positive, which is 11 of the next 17 games that the Kings are playing are going to be in this building. That should be a positive. The month of December is basically all here in the Golden One Center. That should be a positive for the Kings. But the way they've been playing at home, I don't know. The next 2 games for the Kings, they go out on the road. Maybe that's exactly what this team needs to get away and get together outside of the noise of Sacramento and everything. Not that Sacramento's noisy, but you know what I mean. And bond and come together and figure this out as a group traveling together. But when they come back, they best do a better job of defending home floor. They're not going to go anywhere anytime soon. I posed the question going into the break. I'll throw it out there again. How do you consistently fix an inconsistent problem? The Kings do have some consistent issues. The 3-point defense. The 3-point shooting in general. Right? But the Kings are losing games in different ways every single night, whether it's an ice-cold first half, an ice-cold second half, an ice-cold fourth quarter, great first-half defense, then bad second-half defense, or vice versa, right? So many ways that the Kings are losing. How do the Kings fix it? And I'm not posing that question to then follow it up with, here's the answer, or here's the solution. I don't know. The problem is, I don't think they know either. Talking about the coaches, talking about the locker room, the players, I think they are perplexed. They are overwhelmed. The idea of playing a full 48-minute effort and stringing together not just a game, but multiple games where they play close to a full 48-minute effort, I think that idea sounds like taboo or far-fetched for this Kings team right now. That is a problem. Things look too complicated. The Kings don't look like they know who they are. It looks like they know where they struggle, they know their inefficiencies, and they're focusing so hard on addressing those problems and inefficiencies, which is good. You want to address those and improve those, but they're not leaning on any kind of established strength to help carry them through. This team doesn't have an established strength right now outside of maybe tonight it's De'Aaron Fox going crazy. Maybe the other night, next night it's DeMar DeRozan going crazy. Like, that's it. This Kings team just does not have that established strength. They don't have that identity. And here's where they're at. They're 8-10 on the season. They're firmly in 12th place in the West. They've been there for a while, and they're even more firmly in 12th. And 13th, the Portland Trail Blazers, who the Kings play in a couple of games. Portland's biting at their ankles, right? The Portland Trail Blazers are one game back. If I were to tell you 18 games into the season, the Sacramento Kings would barely be above the Portland Trail Blazers, we would either be saying, one, wow, the Trail Blazers are having a really surprising season. Chauncey Billups has them playing really, really well, or, oh, God, things are going terribly. Well, we know which one it is. Things are going terribly for the Kings. They are a game and a half back of the Spurs in 10th. 10th being the final play-in spot. Remember, we were talking about the Kings needing to avoid the play-in this year. They shouldn't be in the play-in. Being in the play-in would be disappointing. Now the Kings are a game and a half out of the play-in picture. Not above it, below it. And they're 2.5 games back at the Clippers in 6th. 2.5 games might not feel like a lot and seem like a lot because mathematically it's not a lot. Except you look at the Kings, who are 8-10, and you look at the team in 6th place, which is the Clippers, and they're 11-8. That's a big difference. 8-10 versus 11-8. It's a big win percentage difference. And that's not an easy ground to make up, even with so much of the season remaining. And here's what you got coming up next. You got Minnesota, who you're 0-2 against so far, on the road. You've lost to them twice at home. Hey, maybe you'll beat them at home, or maybe you'll beat them on the road. I don't know. You have Portland, who the Kings absolutely should beat, but should I even feel confident saying the Kings should beat anybody at this point with how they're playing? Then you return home for a rematch with the Spurs, who've already beaten you. The Rockets, who are playing really well, and that's the final in-season tournament game, and the Rockets have a lot to play for in the in-season tournament, so the Kings got to be ready for that. And then they go back on the road for 2 games, the first one being the Memphis Grizzlies. That's their next 5. At T-Wolves, at Blazers, Spurs and Rockets at home, at Memphis. There are some games, again, in theory, that the Kings should have the advantage in, but the way this team is playing, I don't know if I'd give them an advantage in any game at this point. It sucks, man. It sucks being frustrated. It sucks being pessimistic, especially considering all the optimism and all the excitement that I had about this team coming into things. Again, it's not the end of the world. It doesn't mean that I won't wake up tomorrow and feel better about this Kings team, but it's the reality of where they're at. And look, with higher expectations comes a greater level of disappointment when they don't meet those expectations, right? And I'm not just setting those expectations from myself, like, Matt, it's your fault that you thought so highly of this Kings team. I'm going off of the expectations of the organization. I'm going off of the comments of Monty McNair and Mike Brown talking about winning 50 games, and I'm going off the expectations of Vivek Ranadive saying this. Well, Vivek didn't say this, but we know for a fact Vivek was very upset about the Kings missing the playoffs last year, and making the playoffs this year is the bare minimum expectation. Kings aren't even living up to that. So those are the expectations for the team. That's the bar that they've set for themselves. Bare minimum. And they're not reaching that. So you're damn right we're going to be frustrated here on Locked On Kings, and Kings fans are going to be frustrated. You're absolutely in your right to be frustrated. If you agree with anything or disagree with anything I say, that's fine. Let's talk about it. At Matt George Sack, because I'm certainly not the end-all, be-all, know everything about the Kings. I'm always right about the Kings. That's certainly not the case at all. I'm as perplexed as everybody is at this point in time. So let's talk about it. Let's try and figure out a solution together. Hit me up on Twitter or Blue Sky at Matt George Sack. You can email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com. Leave your thoughts in the YouTube comment section down below. It's Thanksgiving week. We shouldn't be so grumpy. Hopefully the Kings can get us at least one more win, or I think they have 2 games before Thanksgiving, or is it just 1? No, they have 1 game before Thanksgiving. Hopefully they can give us a win in Minnesota to make us feel better around the Thanksgiving table. Or not. 4 straight losses. Things aren't feeling great. We'll see if they can clean it up. Appreciate your support. Can't wait to have you join me on the next episode of Locked On Kings. Until then, my name is Matt George. You've been listening to the Locked On Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.